In 1970, the Soviet Union built a city from nothing. They called it Pripyat. It was meant to be a model of Soviet progress, a showcase of what communism could achieve. 50,000 people lived there. Young families, engineers, scientists, teachers. The average age was just 26. They had everything: swimming pools, cinemas, a palace of culture with a basketball court and a dance hall, shops stocked with goods that were scarce everywhere else in the Soviet Union, color televisions, washing machines, fresh fruit. In winter, a posting to Pripyat was one of the most coveted jobs in the entire country, and at the edge of the city, a brand new amusement park was being built. A 26-meter Ferris wheel, bumper cars, a parachute ride. It was scheduled to open on May 1st, 1986, International Workers' Day. The children of Pripyat could already see it from their windows. 4 kilometers away stood the reason this city existed: the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. 4 reactors, each producing 1,000 megawatts of electricity, a monument to Soviet engineering, a source of pride for everyone who worked there. In February 1986, a Soviet official was quoted saying that the odds of a nuclear meltdown were 1 in 10,000 years. 2 months later, the world changed forever. On the evening of April 25th, 1986, the engineers at Reactor Number 4 began preparing for a safety test. It was supposed to be routine. They wanted to find out whether the reactor's turbines could keep the cooling pumps running during a temporary power outage, the brief gap before the emergency generators kicked in. The test had been tried the year before. It failed. This time, they were going to try again with a new voltage regulator. It was meant to happen during the day shift, the experienced operators. But a regional power station went offline unexpectedly, and the grid controller in Kyiv demanded Chernobyl keep producing. The test was postponed. By 11 that night, the day shift was gone. The evening shift had left. The less experienced night crew took over. They had not been properly briefed on the test. The deputy chief engineer, Anatoly Dyatlov, was there to supervise. He ordered the test to proceed. At 12:28 in the morning on April 26th, the power dropped, far below safe levels. The reactor was becoming unstable. The operators pulled out nearly every control rod to try to raise the power, violating every safety protocol in the book. A 25-year-old engineer named Leonid Toptunov, who had been working independently for just 3 months, was at the controls. Dyatlov ordered the test to begin anyway. At 1:23 in the morning, a senior operator pressed the emergency shutdown button. It was supposed to stop the reactor. Instead, a design flaw in the control rods caused a massive power surge. In 4 seconds, the reactor output spiked to 100 times its normal capacity. 2 explosions ripped through the building. The first blew the 1,000-ton concrete and steel lid off the reactor. The second sent a fireball into the night sky. The core was exposed, burning, releasing 400 times more radiation than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. 2 workers died instantly, but nobody in Pripyat knew. They were asleep. At 1:29 in the morning, 6 minutes after the explosion, the phone rang at Pripyat's fire station. The firefighters were told there was a fire at the power plant. That was all. Nobody mentioned radiation. Nobody mentioned the reactor. 28-year-old Lieutenant Vladimir Pravik commanded the first crew to arrive. When he looked at the building, he saw the roof was gone. Pieces of glowing debris were scattered everywhere. He called for a Stage 3 alarm. All available fire departments in the region. Among the first 9 firefighters from Pripyat was Vasily Ignatenko. He was 25 years old. His wife Lyudmila was at home, pregnant with their first child. The firefighters climbed to the roof of the adjacent building to stop the fire from spreading to Reactor 3. The pieces of debris they were stepping on were chunks of graphite from the reactor core, each one emitting enough radiation to kill a man in minutes. They didn't know. They wore standard firefighting gear. No dosimeters, no lead. Nothing. Their hoses were useless. The graphite was burning at hundreds of degrees. The water evaporated before it touched the surface, so the men tried to stomp the fires out with their boots. The melting bitumen on the roof stuck to their feet. Within 45 minutes, they started collapsing. Vladimir Tishura was the first to vomit uncontrollably, then Nikolai Titanok. The others carried them down from the roof. By dawn, all the fires except the reactor core were out. Vasily Ignatenko was sent to a radiation hospital in Moscow. His wife followed. She was told not to touch him. She held his hand. Anyway, he died 18 days later. His body was so radioactive that he was buried in a sealed zinc coffin encased in concrete. They couldn't get shoes on his swollen feet. They buried him, barefoot. His daughter was born 2 months later. She died 4 days after that. 28 firefighters died within weeks. Most of them never knew what they were fighting. The explosion happened at 1:23 in the morning. By sunrise, the people of Pripyat still had no idea what had happened. They saw smoke from the plant. They saw fire trucks. Some went to the bridge overlooking the reactor to watch the strange blue glow coming from the burning core. They brought their children. That bridge would later be known as the Bridge of Death. For 36 hours, the Soviet government said nothing. Cleaning trucks sprayed white foam on the streets of Pripyat, but nobody explained why. Officials met behind closed doors. Police blocked the roads in and out of the city. The officers at the roadblock had no protective gear. They didn't know either. On April 27th, 36 hours after the explosion, an announcement was finally made. For the attention of the residents of Pripyat, the city council informs you that due to the accident at Chernobyl power station, the radioactive conditions in the vicinity are deteriorating. It is highly advisable to take your documents, some vital personal belongings, and a certain amount of food, just in case. Just in case, the residents were told it would be temporary, packed for 3 days. Over 1,000 buses arrived. Within 3 hours, the entire city of 50,000 people was emptied. Most of them would never return. And still, the world didn't know. 2 days after the explosion, on April 28th, radiation alarms went off at the Forsmark nuclear power plant in Sweden, over 1,000 kilometers away. Swedish scientists traced the source. It was coming from the Soviet Union. They demanded an explanation. That evening, the Soviet news agency finally admitted there had been an accident at Chernobyl. They said the situation was under control. It was not. 3 days later, on May 1st, International Workers' Day, Soviet officials refused to cancel the May Day celebrations in Kiev. Families marched through the streets with their children, 70 kilometers from a reactor that was still burning. The amusement park in Pripyat never opened. The fire in the core was still burning. Helicopters dumped 5,000 tons of sand, lead, clay, and boron onto the reactor from above. The pilots flew directly over the exposed core. Many of them would develop cancer in the years that followed. But the real danger was below. The molten core was sinking. Beneath the reactor sat a pool of water, 20 million liters, used as coolant. If the burning fuel reached that water, the resulting steam explosion would destroy the remaining 3 reactors and spread catastrophic contamination across Europe. 3 men were sent in: mechanical engineer Alexei Ananenko, senior engineer Valery Bespalov, and shift supervisor Boris Baranov. Their mission: wade through the flooded radioactive basement beneath the reactor and open the drainage valves. They wore wetsuits. They carried a single flashlight. In the darkness, knee-deep in radioactive water, they found the valves. They opened them. The water drained. The steam explosion was averted. All 3 survived, but the cleanup was far from over. Radioactive debris from the reactor core was scattered across the roof of the adjacent building. It had to be removed before the sarcophagus could be built. Robots were sent in first. Japanese robots, German robots, Soviet robots. The radiation destroyed their circuits within minutes, so they sent in men. They called them fire robots. Each man was given a lead vest, a helmet, and a shovel. They had 90 seconds. 90 seconds to run onto the roof, shovel 1 load of radioactive graphite over the edge, and run back. That was it. 1 run. 90 seconds. Then they were done, not for the day. Done with radiation, forever. 5,000 men went up on that roof. Some went back for a second run. Some went back for a third. In total, 600,000 people were drafted as liquidators, soldiers, miners, firefighters, civilians, to clean up the worst nuclear disaster in history. By the end of 1986, they had entombed Reactor 4 in a massive concrete and steel structure. They called it the sarcophagus. It was meant to be temporary. It lasted 30 years before a new steel shell had to be built around it. An estimated 60,000 liquidators are dead. 165,000 are disabled. Today, Pripyat is the most famous ghost city on Earth. Trees grow through apartment floors. Classrooms sit frozen in time. Books open on desks. Dolls lying on kindergarten floors. Shoes still lined up at doorways. A half-played chess game. waits for a move that will never come. The Ferris wheel stands exactly where it stood in April 1986, bright yellow capsules, rusting in the rain. It never carried a single child. The exclusion zone covers 2,600 square kilometers, an area nearly twice the size of London. It will remain contaminated for at least 20,000 years. The official death toll from the Soviet government was 31. The World Health Organization estimated 4,000 would eventually die from radiation exposure. Independent studies put the number as high as 93,000. The true number will never be known. The radiation released by Chernobyl was 400 times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It contaminated farmland across Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. It was detected in rainwater in Ireland, in reindeer meat in Scandinavia, in sheep in Wales. Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union, later wrote, "The Chernobyl disaster, even more than my launch of perestroika, was perhaps the real cause of the collapse of the Soviet Union. The reactor burned for 10 days. The consequences will last 20,000 years."